Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. Unit 4 IGNU DEGC 111. Unit 4. The testimony of our uh, inexhaustible, uh, inexhaustible the treasure by Pandit Ramabai. Object. Introduction. About the author Pandit Ramabai. Expression 4. Testimony of our inexhaustible treasure. Analysis, narrative technique, letter sum of aid and activity, glossary, unit questionnaire. Objectives. On the basis of reading the text, this unit will able to you understand the testimony of the inexhaustible treasure by Pandit Ramabai as the autobiographical reflection of a person who extend over different and distant cultural space, time and practices. You would also be able to infer the book is not only about the spiritual path of her life but also about the space and context of self-security in the secular level of wealth. While reading the analyzing the text, the reading will agree that it is almost impossible to appropriate single gender to Pandita Ramabai. Taking into the according to enormous challenges issues she should choose take up, it is difficult to restrict her a single field. To name a few, she deserves to be called a feminist, a dispatriotic writer, an educational and social reformer, a spiritual leader, an empowerment woman, and most importantly, a humanitarian. As a student of English literature, your objective is primarily to analyze her contribution to the varieties of literary compositions that go her credit, namely book, essay, facet letters, translations, and autobiography. In this section, you are focused on her autobiography titled A Testimony of Our Inexhaustible Treasure. Introduction. The autobiography has always been considered as an enthusiastic and important source of knowledge about complex, interact and ambiguous characters of an individual. Pandita Padmabhai autobiography written March 1907, 14 years before her death, stands apart by the fact that while a typical autobiography usually depicts a personal life simple as a journey along linear passage that eventually find its goals and aims of life. The testimony of our inexhaustible treasure divine from the normal because there is neither chronology nor a history, probably because it is a story of a person who was not like a road, a career, an advertisement, or a history or a simple passage from birth to culture, well, social and political event of her time. The roadblock that she encountered and overcome in her life are startling and compel the reader to keen observe and evaluate the sensitive sociology, cultural, religious, and historical issues that shaped Ramabai persona, including her conversation for high caste Hindu to a Christian. She was fortunate that she had access to education. This was indeed a privilege that she had over her contemporaries. The translation of Bible from Greek and Hebrew into her mother tongue to Marathi was her magnum opus and marked the apogee of her religious discouraged from the Orthodox Brahmin origins. why a series indicator stages landmark by her early writers. Meera Kosambai called her writers as militant feminist, rhetoric, and Pandita Ramabai. Therefore, reading of autobiographical allows us to deduce the simple personal history of an individual is actually a collective reality. This book is a prism through which a reader view and Madrian shade of Ramabai life, her growth from being an offering of her time to succeed and become to the important, so relevant and inspire as to influence and shape creatively and meaningfully the prevalent and social doctrines by her active role. As Rambai spiritual autography, it is also testified to key moments in her life and conversation and explain how she felt bound to tell as many women as it possible. The Christian Jesus came to say, sinner like me, about the author. In spite of her privileged background and her conversation to the Christianity, Pandita Ramabai is very much of heroes of her time. She was postulated social reformer and women's rights activists of India in the late 19th century. She was born on April 23, 1858 to Lakshmi Bai and Anand Shastri Donegre, an enlightened and orthodox Chitpavan Brahmin couple. To Orthodox Anand Shastri Donegre advocate education for women, a Sanskrit scholar and a Puraniga himself. He educated his wife and children in Sanskrit texts even at the cost of obstructions. Rambai had a rather usual childhood while she was still very younger. Her parents fell into poverty and left her home and became religious vagrants, traveling the length and the breadth of the Indian subcontinent and learning many of its language. Growing up the children of a wandering couple, Rambai and her siblings escape being tied down by the conventional demands of a social group. Learning and progressive ideas were at the center of this family. Wall Street was nobility of a character and is enabled her and her elder sister Krishna Bhai to escape the rigid gender code as well. But the femininity of 1874 to 77 provides disaster of a Dongri family because it resulted in the demise in Rambai's mother and sister within a few months of each other. Left to find for themselves a true in their religious commitment. She and her brother Srinivasa continue with their peregrination. Her insulation of reading enabled hero to become at the age of 20 the first woman in India to earn the title of Pandita and Saraswati after examination by the faculty of University of Calcutta. It is here that she lost her only surviving sibling Srinivasa to cholera. She then married Sudra in civil quarter, a Jew and there of higher caste echelons. Combined with her scholarly achievement, this discussion represents a remarkable commitment to the question of the tradition. Thought happy, the marriage was brief. Her husband died with 2 years, leaving her with a daughter. It was undoubtedly the worst waste and could befall a woman in a society which never considered a woman as an individual but an appendage or to her husband. She talks vividly about spilling in her book The High Caste Hindu Woman. Within first year of her widows, she founded Arya Mahliya Samaj, a society of high caste Hindu women working for education of girls. and against children marriage. She published her first book, Morals for Women, or in the original Marathi original Marathi Satri Dharma Nidhi. She also testified before the Hunters Commission on Education in India, an inquiry set up by British government. She presented an impassioned case saying that it is evident that women, being half of the people of this country, are oppressed and cruelly treated by their own half. This testimony was later printed and is said to have been influenced by taking of Queen Victoria. Next year she sailed England with the intention to study medicine so that in the end of she could return to India as a doctor. This plan could not materialize because she was diagnosed with incurable defense. She now used her time in England to study Christianity, which she has started in India. If we analyze this more objectively, we can infer that the person traveled to England was an anxious mother with widow, determined to draw more from life than was offered her, with an honest heart to genuinely help women, and also a person in quite of answer to her external and religious duties. Her faith in Hinduism had been shaken after the reading the Vedas and Upanishads, book actually forbidden for women. Although study these texts opened her eyes to the position according in them to a woman and Sudras. She was puzzled by the varieties of religious options these texts offer, but found the thread of commonality in each of them about their unanimity on the deserving status of women and Shudras in India's social fabric. It turned her into specific. She said, "My eyes are being gradually opened. I was waking up to my own hopeless condition as a woman, and it was becoming clearly and clearer to me that I had to place anywhere as far as a religious consolation was concerned, because quite dissatisfied with myself. I want something more than the Shastras could give me, but I did not know what it was that I wanted." She and her young daughter were baptized in Anglican Christians. Many aspects of English life appeared to her, but having rejected the caste system in her own country, she was not at ease with the hierarchy of social classes in England. Having given up her dreams of a medical degree, she traveled on the USA in 1886 and the active world of 19th century American feminists. She succeeded in capturing the limited to serious lecture to zealous and advocate the causes of Indian women education and status in society. Simultaneously, she learned very quickly how to write a book and would correspond to Western criteria, resulting in the publishing of her bestseller, The High Class Hindu Woman, 1887. It was also her fundraising track. She was by now full of plans of reforms in India. She took up American cause to support in print the Massachusetts Society of Prevention of Cruelty of Animals and speaking at the first meeting of International Council of Women in 1888, a body which brought together active of US, Britain and Canada. She observed the American education system very closely and also took a course in kindergarten teaching and later on introduced it in India. In America, she found the kind of democracy and the kind of women's education she was looking for it. It her that she conveyed the idea of home for high-class Hindu widows in India. Her nearness towards her goal and role as a social reformer lead her appreciate the liberal democratic nature of American society as opposed to a satisfied orthodox of Indian society. She completed and published the Observation of Marathi, 1889. The people of the United States, she wrote. The national might of United States does not lie in its standing army, cannons and swords. It ails the education advertisement and the diligence of national inhabitants. She was perhaps concentrated Britain with America. After traveling the encounters Western countries of 6 years, Ramabai returned to India in 1888 and began to realize her dream project by opening a widow's home, Sharada Sadhan. Sharada Sadhan. Immediately, the later expansion into Mukti Mission. The move was generally applause in enthusiasm approved by the nationalists and social reformers, but problem creep up when she shifted to the Pune 1890, a bastion of conversation of Marathi Brahmin culture, which would not allow the instruction of Christian religious, and through the medium of newspaper Rambai was accused of proselytized upper caste widows and women of lower caste on the pretext of social welfare. This criticism and migration made her turn towards Christian religion more effectively. Initially, she considered religion as an option, but in the aftermath of these attacks from all the quarters, she often praised Christianity and even initiated women to convert if they wish to do so. When famine and plague struck the central Indian province in late 1890s, she turned her attention to the housing and education of famine victims, creating a new organization of the purpose. She also set up the Kriba Sanda, a rescue home for the sexually abused women. Mukti Sadhan was renamed as Pandita Rambai Mukti Sadhan in 1969 and has been a beacon of light in the lives of many women till today. This place developed as an exemplary female microcosm because Rambai focus was on empowering women not only through knowledge of reading and writing but also in training them various vocations like teaching, nursing, tailoring and helping them to become finally independent. As far as her writing goes, she published in Hindi and Sanskrit as well as in the Marathi in English. Her travel about England and America industrially reverse conversing of Western travel writers in East. The episodal exchanges she had written spiritual mother, her daughter, and other form a considerable part of her literary corpus. Her last poem work was a translation of entire Bible to Marathi from Greek and Hebrew. Indian social as it today, certain on immeasurable debates to the education, feminist, social thinkers, and reformed Pandit Ramabai. Pandita Ramabai. Pandita Ramabai. Expert from the text. The book opened with the lines, Jesus said, "Go home today, friends, and tell them what great thing the Lord has done for you." And these lines excavate Pandita Rambai intention for writing this book, which also happened to be her spiritual odyssey with the disclosure her retrospective perspectives on her own life. She derives pride in her upbringing, the caption in the chapter as an honorable heritage. Speaking of her father, she means no words and says, "My father thought very orthodox Hindu and strictly adhered to caste and other religious rule, was yet reformed in his own way. He could not see why women and peoples of Sudra caste should not learn, read and write the Sanskrit language and learn scared literature other than the Vedas." So she tried to experiment at home by teaching his wife and tutors her into a Sanskrit scholar who passed the knowledge to her children. The above outrages of Ender Brahmin's community, which tried to dislodge him to the hierarchical course, but he was admirable success in conveying the assembly of Pandit that he was not going against the law of scriptures. Some people honor him for what he was doing, and some describe him. He cared little for what people said and did what he thought was right. He taught and educated my mother, brother, sister, and others. speak about her education, say, I did not know of any school for girls and women extending then, where higher education was to be obtained. Moreover, my parents want to us to be strictly religious and adhere their old faith. Learning any other language was out of the question. Secular education any kind was looking upon leading people to wordless out of question. Secular education kind was looking up leading people to wordless with the would prevent them from getting into the way of moksha or liberation for everlasting trouble of reincarnation. To learn the English language and to come in the contact with the Malchas, the non-Hindu are called. Dwelling on her parents' vacation, she says, ever since I remember anything, my father and mother were always traveling from one scared place to another, staying in each place of something months, bathing in the scared river or tank, visiting temple, worshipping household gods, and imagine gods in the temple, or reading Puranas in the temple or in some convent place. The readers of Puranikas, they are called, are the popular in public purchase in religious of the Hindus. The audience revenge them the out of great offer money, flower, fruit, sweet, garments, and other things to them, and therefore we never had to beg or work to earn our livelihood. But when Pandita introduced the reading to the next chapter called Feminine, Death and Doubt, she is scanning about the flow of her life, their vocation, especially during the feminines with crop field and the people starved. According to her, we were not fit to do any other work to earn our livelihood, as we had grown up in perfect ignorance of anything outside the scary literature of the Hindu. We could not do the mental work, nor could we beg to get the incidents of life. We suffered from feminine, which we had brought upon ourselves. My father, mother, and sister all died for starving within a few months of each other. This was in the year 1870. She and her brother surveyed and traveled through India for many years. We had walked more than 4,000 miles on foot without any shortage of comfort, something eating, want to kind people give us, and something going without food, with poor, coarser cloth, and finding a little shelter expecting in the Dharmashala. We wandered from the south to the north as far as Kashmir, and then to the east and west to Calcutta in 1878. We stay in Calcutta for about years, become acquainted with the learned Brahmins. We do not know what it was, for we had never come in social contact with either in Hindu reformers nor with the Christian before that time. It was during the time her disentment with Indian religious began. She realized through which her brother, the religious, did not hold his promises. Their prayers and ritual acts were not effective. So Calcutta played in a decisive role in Pandita Ramabai's life. Both of her recognized and profound scholars in her step into the world of social recognition. He stamped up and gains of all the Hindu religious books, Dharma, Shastra, and Vedic literature as follows. The woman has no right to study the Vedas and Vedanta, and without knowing them, no one can know the Brahma. Without knowing Brahma, no one can get liberation. Therefore, no woman has a woman can get liberation, that is moksha. The same rule as applied to the Sudras. I stay in Bengal and Assam for 4 years in all and study the Bengali language. While living with my husband at Silchar, Assam, I had found a little pamphlet in my library. I do not know how it came there, but I picked it up and began to read, and with great interest. It was St. Lucas Goffer's, the Bengali language. Gradually, her interest in Christian religion deepened, uh, and she confesses, "Have I lost all faith in my former religions, and with my heart hungering after something better, I eagerly learned everything which I could about the Christian religion, and dedicated my indication become Christian, if I were to perfectly satisfy with the new religion. I had times begun to study English language but did not know how to write or speak it. I realized after reading fourth chapter of John Gospel, the Christian was truly the divine Savior he claimed to be, and no one but he could transform and upfit to downtrodden womanhood of India and of every land. Thus my heart was a drawn religious of Christian. I was indelibly convinced of this trust on reading a book written by Father Ghosh, and was baptized in the Church of England in the later part of 1883 while living with a sister at Vantage. From some years after my baptism, I was comparatively happy to think that I had found a religion which gave privileges equally to men and women. There was no distinguished caste, color, or sex made. I can give our faith ideas if what I felt when my mental eyes were open, and when I, who was sitting in the dark, was great light, and when I felt sure that to me, who yet a few moments ago sat in the religion and shadow of death, light had struck up. Pandita Ramabai could see the difference between teaching of the two religions. The Brahma priests have tried to reason the woman and Shudras and other low caste people in the belief that they have some hope. But when we study ourselves the book of religious law and inquiry from the higher authority, we find that there is nothing, no anything whatever for us. Her aesthetics is visible in the following lines. How good, how incredible good. What good news for a woman born in India among Brahmas who hold up no hope for me and the like of me. The Bible declares the Christian did not reserve this great salvation for a particular caste or sex. The Holy Spirit made it clearly to make from word of God that the salvation which God gives through solely Christian is present and not something future, and believed it, receiving it, and I was filled with joy. My reader will not therefore find fault with me for making the subject so very personal. The heart experience of an individual are too scared to be exposed to the public gaze. When we should I give them to public in this way? Because necessity is laid upon me, yeah, woes it upon to me. The readers will not therefore find fault with me for making the subject so very personal. In heart experience of individual are too scared to be exposed to the public gaze. Whither should I give them to the public in this way? Because necessity is laid up me, yeah, woe in upon me. In this preach not the gossip. Corinthians 19:16. I am bold to tell as many men and women as possible that Christian Jesus came to save sinner like me. He has saved me. Praise the Lord. I know He is able also to save them to the uttermost that come to upon God by Him, saying He ever needs to make intercession to them. For what shall I profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give exchange of soul? We have nothing to fear from anybody, nothing to lose, nothing to regret, The Lord is our inhospitable treasure. My work in the beginning was a purely education one, and the religious liberty was to be given to intimate my school, and all plans were made to start the home for windows as soon as should led to the Bombay. If I were to write all the Lord has done for me, even much as it lied to my power to do so, the book would be too large of a person to read. So I have made an account of my spiritual experience as a short possible. I am very glad and very thankful to the Lord of making it possible for me to give this testimony of the Lord's goodness to me. Analysis. At every step, her writing reflects her biography. The testimony of our inhospitable treasure was written by Ramabai in 1907, and she named it as in accountable my spiritual experience. Thought this book she explored their grateful to the God of Westons to her privilege to give this testimony of Lord Godness. The book has also begun to acclaim the Rambai spiritual autobiography since it testified key moment in her life. The unfolded of event is almost dramatic in which tragedy is slowly built up, culminate in her silence and exit from the social life. Apart from being illustrated throwback, the book forces the reader to observe the independency between her personal and creative venture and the contextual barriers. Pandit Ramabai wrote her autobiography in English and probably intentioned in both the Indian as well as Western Christian. The book really how she sees her own history and how she wants to read the understand it. It is a passionate outcome of heart full of devotion. She had already spent 24 years practices Christianity, and she therefore read her life not merely as an outer convert, but also one who had realized Christian with herself, and yet her life was not simple as that. We cannot ignore the complex issue that the book addressed. The reader had the advantages of uncovering with widely misunderstood pain. Ramabai for national revival, she dwelled on varieties of diverse issues of 18th century in India, like religious, culture, gender, and most importantly, nationalism. Noticeable, all these were prominently made propagate the command of strict orthodox of partial tradition. But Rambai, unwavering determined of national building, enabled her to overcome strategic exclusion at the various levels. The testimony of our inhospitable treasure, she viewed her whole life of the perspective enriched by the religious faith. It is a candid account to the trial. The tributor reflects through the religious test. She does not hesitate to confess their dissatisfaction with the Hindu religious test and the skepticism were disturbing her through the tried time during the after the feminine. She was lured by the varieties of opinion the test contains, but they also had one thing in the common and it is acceptable for descriptive, therefore women and Sudras, and conveying that they cannot access to salvation or liberation of bondage of life cycle. This was unacceptable to her. She was in a search of something better in Christian religion. She was promised salvation with appreciate but was not intellectually convinced. Her fascination with the Christian religions was mainly because it is always with all the man-made barriers, discrimination and exclusion as opposed to the rigid and creepable caste system and gender-based professional by Hindu religion. For her, Christianity was not merely as a religious, but it held the vision of an egalitarian society, almost utopia. She believes that Indian society lacked the capacity to regulate land, therefore, adopting for new religion and social order was only solution to their crisis. Her visit in recluse home in England will shelter those so-called fallen women, further strengthened by belief Christianity because her own ascendant faith do not offer such providence of victim. The compassionate nature of Christianity conveys her. No one built a Christian to transform and uplift downwards womanhood of India and every land. Her conveying Christianity led to Catherine attack on her for all concerned, accused her via visitor in gender for Franklin betrayal also seen academic or her sex. On the issues her supervision of home for women, she was accused for professionally. She returned to the nationalist demand for independence and equality, and mislead the women were also entitled for the same. She brought to fore of inherent contradictions in the nationalist vision. Although Ramabai tracked clearly B-liners her trajectory to the broad Anglican tradition, it is equally honest about her critical attitude to the religious. She did not blindly accepted by any religion, but embraced only certain aspects of her new faith in the law of personal, social, and cultural circumstances. And considered, she clearly stated that I want to find out true about everything, including religious by experiment. He initially into Christian found grasping for this truth because she was encountered by different demonstration and their contradiction teaching the Bible of religious in Christian countries. She accepted that she had to labor under the great intellectual difficult for something better which I had not found. The autobiography reflects her objectively, and she had a subject her ancestral faith. Hinduism to similar sectarianity, she was equally critical of Puranikas who were indifferent towards their audience as to the dogmatic belief of Orthodox followers her like parents who did not educate, secular education, and partial investment. Reader of autobiography can easily analyze her individualistic uh, take on religious when she was said she had been reading about Bible and non-textual itself. She could have done her intellectually sundering does not allow her accept everything a new faith offers. Pandit Ramabai wrote her autobiography in English and probably instead in the both the Indian as well as Western Christian. The book reveals how to she see her own history and how does she want the reader to understand it. It is a passionate outputter of heart full of devotion. She had already spent 24 years practicing Christianity and she therefore reader of her life not merely as an outer convert but as one who had realized Christian with herself. And yet her life was not as simple as that. We cannot ignore the complex issue that the book of address. The reader have to advantages uncovering the widely misunderstood plans and Rambai for national reveal. She dwelled on a varieties of tribes issues in 18th century India like religion, culture, gender, and most importantly, nationalism. Initially, all these were predominantly male, pragmatic, and strictly orthodox in partial tradition. But Rambai, unwavering determination of national building, encouraged her to overcome drastic exclusion various levels in a testimony of our inexhaustible treasure. She viewed her whole life of appreciation enriched by their religious faith. It is candid account the trials and tribulation reflects through the religious lens. She does not hesitate to the conveys the dissatisfied with the Hindu religion tested. And she is kept to distribute her thoughts and trying to dream during and after the feminine. She was dwelling by the varieties to optimize these tenets of considering. But they also had to take in common and this accepting of the privileged status of woman and Shudras, and conviction of the cannot access alienation of liberation from the bondage of life cycle. This was uncountable to her. She was in the search of something better. In Christian religion, she was promised salvation which appreciated but not intellectually convinced. Her fascination with the Christian religion was mainly because it is always with all the man-made barriers, discrimination and execution option to the rigid and creeping caste system. The gender-based profession by Hindu religion for her, Christianity was not merely religious, but it held a vision of an egalitarian society almost in utopia. She believes that Indian society lacked the capacity to regenerate and therefore adoption of new religion and social orders was the only solution to this crisis. Her visit to the Receive Home England with shelter that so-called fallen woman further strengthened her beliefs Christianity because her own nasty faith did not offer such provision for victims. The compassionate nature of Christianity convinced her that no one but he Christian could transform and upstill to downtrodden womanhood of India and ever land. Her conversation of Christianity led to saccharine attack for all the corners, accusing her vice versa her gender of factfulness and betrayal. Also, she endemic of sex. Herself. On the issue her supervision of home for widows. She was accused for prosperity. She in return drew in the nationalities demands for independence and equality, and instead the women were also entitled for the same. She brought for the inheritance contradictions in the nationalist vision. Although Ramabai track clearly determined her transitionality of the board Anglican tradition, it is equally honest about her critical attitude to the religious. She did not blinding aspect by religious, but embraced only certain aspect of her new faith in the light of personal, social, and cultural circumstances and consideration. She clearly stated that I want to find the truth about everything including religion by experiment. Her initiation of Christianity found in grasping for this truth because she was encountered by different dominations and their contradiction teaching and Bible of religion in Christian countries. She accepted she had to labor under the great intellectual difficulties for something better which I had not found. The autobiography reflects the objectives and she had subjected her ancestral faith, Hinduism, to similar sacredity. She was equally critical of Puranikas who were indifferent towards their audience as of a dogmatic belief of orthodox followers like her parents who did not advocate secular education As partial investment, readers of her autobiography can easily analyze her individualistic take on religious when she was say that she has been reading about Bible and not the text itself should have done. Her intellectual sound does not allow her acceptable everything the new faith offered the professors. There were many points of continuity with her own spiritual mentor. In fact, her personal interruptions of Christian were trammed and instead of the native probable pride and ignorance. He chose to the Western countries made her comfort the true without Western evaluation of ornament. She objected to the Hindus being called the helpless by the European. Her experience in America needs to be dealt upon because while on one side she praised the status of women in the society, but on other she critical of the barbaric customs of salvation practiced in the temple of the democracy. Ramabai forced one more allegation forced upon her on Christian. This was her position where reformed the colonial regiments because deposit her conversation. Her never failed integrated invasion enterprise. Her religious and political orientation like her isolated at itself. She was not deterred. Her outrages at the orientation of left her isolated at the time, she was not detrained. He outgraded at the segregation camp in Pune during the plague 1897 and especially the treatment of women there, which made her return Lord to the Sadhurast. The governor of the Bombay was unanswerable to the British Parliament, where the governor dismissed the charges and described them to heavily excrete and some hence despective. Ramabai quickly responded by reliable accused their baseless and faithful wives with the wood of usually associated or injured. She is not allowed the issue to die the easily enough the Christian community to consider the indication of bacteria of Christian values and truthfulness and imperiality. She confesses the apologies in the book of being very personal. Yet she admits that a few faiths have put responsibility on her offer her life and concert illustration of its wonders. Narrative technique. Susan Tharoor and K. Lalita draw attention to the future of the modern autobiography, claim that in exhibited certain ambivalence, where often the answer is personal and preoccupation with imitate, and even the confession emphasize on the personal offer occurs the fact the autobiography always draws on the referentials. The culture provides a particular justice in the history. The almost seems the true of Ramabai, although she is careful and chronic in social culture and historical anxiety of her times. She does not relation to the issue that affect her mission. Meera Kosambai also comments on the aspect the pointer to points to the effort of plot her entire past Mediterranean Christianity, especially in her later writers. Undoubtedly, her autobiography can also be seen revolutionary because it explores uncharted terrains of experience. She is a defense aware of the being in a site on which belongings of caste, class, and nation, all colored by the deceit of the patriarchy, find themselves out for this magnetic space her voice emerge as a divesting of the usual trajectory of traditional male. Autobiography as she shall about construct herself an exemplary figure who does not mercy recount the retell her accomplished and experience. Rather is in touch portrayal of the growth and feminist consciousness, although her trust on the space areas in social reform and also her chosen and practice of religion. The message of her autobiography must not be confident or make for the proselytization. Christianity asserted Ramabai for space where liberty was the foundation of society, and any divorce between these who were result in collapse of the latter. The idea was equality, justice, inspiring Ramabai enterprises for social, cultural, religious changes as well as her mission for women. Reform in this new personal account leader Rambai's way to head the father, orthodox reformer in her object the social reformers. And much like him, she displayed the partial baseline, stood the perception with characters nameless, and also created little what people said and did what is that for right. Relevant and glorify widely, read and silent, evoke the historical narratives, and also for the Pandita Rambai remains always personal difficulty to appropriate and ignore. Pandita Rambai Saraswati was a feminist who was writing activist and an educationist. She was not only pioneer of women empowerment and liberation about the social reformer who led from the front. Her professionally individuality Sanskrit language later on expensive to other Indian language and ultimately culminate in her authority on her language of the rural master English. Other than being Puranika, she was a Versailles writer and a poet. During her stay abroad, when she even accepted Christianity as a religion, she developed version of reading the textbooks subscribed in the school of US. The tradition even introduced them to school back in the India. She became the first education to introduce kindergarten system in India. She tribute the Bible into her mother tongue in Marathi. In recognizing of her service, the human community, she was honored with the highest Kaisar Hindi British colony government of India in 1990. For her unrelated contribution, advanced Indian woman and government Indian issue comparative stamp in 1989 in her honor. Such was contributed to Pandita Rambai Saraswati, a woman ahead of her time. Ashram means resident school which embraces religious instruction. Chitpavan Brahmin, a Brahmin community with Kogan, the coastal region Western India. Pandita means element female scholar and a teacher. Professionalized conveys something for religious actors. Purna's starting of ancient tells used term Vedic teaching or to women and lower caste men. Puranika, a male female Purana recite. Saraswati, goddess of learning. Shastri, a scholars of technique. Sudra, the lowest forecast. Under Commission, also known as the first Indian Education Commission, was appointed by Lord Ripon, the Governor General of India, under the chairperson of Sir William Hunter. The commission mainly focused on the state of primary education in the country.